In this video, we're going to be covering virtualization. And virtualization is quite a big topic now because it's kind of really changing the landscape of when it comes to developing networks and developing solutions, IT solutions. And in this video, we're going to be going over what is virtualization today and what are some of the key concepts to understand and some of the terminology to go with it. Now, I don't have this scripted. This is just a walkthrough and some of the learnings that I've been learning when it comes to this topic and sharing what I've learned. So on my right-hand side is what's called a virtual machine. A virtual machine is essentially, this is a new term for you, or maybe not, but it's a hypervisor 2. There's a hypervisor 1. This is a hypervisor 2. So essentially what a hypervisor 2 is, you'll see Oracle VirtualBox is one of the bigger players in the industry. There's also VM Workstation. That's I would say a competitor. They do exactly the same thing. The Oracle VM VirtualBox is essentially a way in how I can describe this is if I bring up let's see, now I don't want to take a picture of this. Let's just do a whiteboard here. So essentially, okay, we gotta let this load. Essentially, we have our computer. Let's call this CPU. And we have Windows running. And so the virtual machine, how it's designed is that a virtual machine will sit as an application. Let's call this, put this in blue. Let's call this VMware, or VirtualBox. They're both the same thing, like I said. So essentially what you can do is, let's say you need to have a bunch of different operating systems and you don't want to have the actual physical computers. So what you do is you install VirtualBox and you import a bunch of different operating systems. Now the different operating systems and the versions will dictate what your specifications are and what you're looking to do. Essentially, virtual machine will allow you to import the installation files for the operating system, and you'll be able to run it on top of your existing physical hardware of the computer itself. So inside the VMware, just humor me here. Let's say we have Windows. We have a Windows machine here, W1, W2, and then we're going to want a different machine that will be Linux. We'll call that L1. And then maybe if we don't want Linux, maybe we want a different OS that would be, let's just call this OS, a custom OS that would be here. So essentially, you have 4 PCs that are virtually working with your laptop or, your workstation. So essentially, again, you have 4 operating systems that have been virtualized. The resources that they're using is like the processing power is coming from your hardware, but you're able to run 4 different operating systems that are siloed, segmented, and they're not talking to each other at all. They do get their own IP address from the main computer. That's our Windows CPU, like our actual Windows system. It's called like bridge networking, and so that's where they can get the same IP, they're in the same subnet. But this could be like this computer could, in the last octet, let's say it's using a /24 notation. This would be, let's say, 10. The next one could be .11, .12, .13, and .14. So essentially, all these computers could all be in a network, and they could have their own IPv4 network address, so they could all speak to each other as well. So now the benefit of having these virtual machines is that outside in the real world, you might want to have these operating systems be doing very specific tasks, and you want to have those then accessible to the internet. You can do that. So the only cons to that I can think of when it comes to using this type of setup is that it is quite intensive, depending on what applications you're running and what type of OSs that you're using in the VMware on your actual computer, and that's the only big thing that I can think of right now. But essentially, that is kind of where things are at with virtual machines at a very elementary level when it comes to uh, virtual machines. So this is kind of the layout. As you can see, I already have a couple of systems set up here. I can turn one on for you and have you take a look at it. So um, this is a CyberOps Security Onion. This is a very specific operating system for security purposes. And as you can see, you kind of get the graphical display of what you would see like on a real screen. And see, I'm starting up a second one. As you can see here, these are the settings that you have on a virtual machine. Uh, and this is kind of the resources that you want the machine to run on. So you can make it go faster or slower based on, the type of system requirements that you do here. Once the machine is off, you can change the settings by hitting the settings button here and changing, the CRM and stuff like that. As you can see, we have the system right here and it's running. Okay, we can suspend this. Okay, so that's what virtual machines look like. Now, Vagrant files. What's Vagrant? Let me open it up here. So Vagrant is using the technology of virtual machines. The reason why people are using Vagrant is that they have certain scenarios where they need to have things set up really fast and they want configurations done for them on the fly. So imagine what I just showed you with the virtual machines. Imagine you had to set 10 of them up in 10 minutes. Manually, that would take you maybe 30 minutes with all the installation and all the clicking. So the Vagrant file is essentially like a cookbook where it has all of these settings in one file. And all you have to do is to say go, and it will load everything up in a matter of seconds. So that's essentially what a Vagrant file is it's nothing new in the way of changing virtual machines. It's just a way in how you can configure and install so much faster and be on the fly and spin up machines. So the word, if you've heard people say spin, it just means to create operating systems in seconds. So here's the settings. This is written in Ruby. And essentially, I don't think I can draw on my screen here, but essentially, if you look at my mouse here, this is kind of opening it up here, Vagrant config 2. And this is kind of the setup of what I want the machine to do. It's going to create one machine here that will create a MySQL database. And the first one up here, it will create a web server. So I will do some code here. Vagrant up. Let's see here. I think I've already been running it, so I can just have to say Vagrant reload. And so what's going to start happening is you'll see the web server here start running. So you'll see this start changing here. It'll start turning this on. As you can see, it's saying starting now. So now it's running, and you can customize so much inside the Vagrant file. This is just a small Vagrant file that you can create. There's Vagrant files that are already pre-done for you, so you don't have to actually write the code. If you search virtual boxes, or sorry, Vagrant boxes, you'll be able to see boxes already done for you. You can click on this and see what this screen is showing. Like if we were actually having a computer with this operating system, this is what you would see. So this web server is essentially setting, we want to host our own website. So we're going to have one machine that's dedicated to running, and will always stay on so that people can visit an application and get information. Once this web server is done, it's then going to move over to creating a machine that has a MySQL database. And I'll show that to you here in a second. Okay, so now we have the computer for our web server up and running. Let's see if it actually works. So it does. I'll bring it over to my other screen here. So as you can see, it has a localhost 8080. This is just, I've remapped the network so that I run it on port on my end, it would be 8080. And then for the server that I just booted up, it's running on 8080. So how this works is when I created a virtual machine for this website, or this web server, I should say, it essentially did it all in here that I have highlighted. So what it did is it created a web server, call it web server, and then it said, and what it did is it created a virtual box in this instance of using this type of software online. Going to give it the host name web server, and here is where it uses the forwarded port, me80, and the host that will be hosting this website is 8080. And then what I do is I link the folder up, the sync folder. And so what that does is it puts the file, the HTML file that you see on the screen here. It's a joke, of course. I had to create a simple website on the fly for an assignment. And essentially, hey, find the HTML file in this directory and sync it up with my current directory from my host machine. So that is how this all ended up working. Now, the second machine that was created is down here, the MySQL database. So let's go take a look into that machine. Let's double click. Oh, we won't access it from there. We'll access it from the command line here. Oh, still running. Okay, let's see here. So let's go Vagrant status. Let's just make sure everything's running. And so we have the web server and the database server running. So let's SSH. Let's SSH into the database server. So we're going to go Vagrant SSH DB server. And now we're in this machine that we created. And it took, a few seconds. And so now I want to go into MySQL. So we're going to do sudo MySQL. We're in the database. And let's see, show databases. And now we can see the databases that we have in our database. These are the different ones. And so if I wanted to open up the NC Coffee, I would use NC coffee, and then show tables. And then you can see we have these two tables in our database. So that that was created over here, the MySQL machine, using that code right there. And essentially we were saying, hey, create this new machine called database server, sync this database from folders in our host computer, like my physical computer, to this uh, folder structure on the guest machine, the one I'm creating, and then create a private network. So, it has an IP address. This is the type of memory and CPU usage I want this machine to take. And here are the command lines that set up. So creating the database, updating all the software in the machine. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. So in this video, we looked at virtual machines. We looked at virtualization. We looked at a bunch of great topics that are super popular in the IT space when it comes to virtualization. Thank you very much.